Howdy, and welcome back to Celebrating Vintage Model Kits. Today we're looking at another frog kit. This one's from 1955. It's for their Hawker, or for a Hawker, Seahawk, and naval jet fighter. It's kit number 328P, P designated plastic. This was early in Frog's production of plastic kits, so they added the P on there to let you know it was a plastic kit. This one is in 1/72nd scale. Frog was one of the first companies to start developing a kind of consistent scale with their kits, and the 172 started pre-World War II and carried through their recognition models that they built for the Air Ministry, and then that scale got picked up by the United States Navy when they started developing recognition models, and then the U.S. Army Air Force continued that same sizing as well. So that's kind of the origin of the 72nd scale, if you were unfamiliar with that. Let's talk a little bit about the subject here, the Hawker Seahawk. Towards the end of World War II, Hawker was heavily involved with the production of the Hurricane, the Typhoon, the Tempest. They were working on the Fury, and the Air Ministry didn't want Hawker to get sidetracked from that because those were very crucial fighters, and Hawker was at full capacity in their designing and production. So the early first jets were kind of handed off to some of the companies that weren't producing such critical aircraft, such as Gloucester and de Havilland. All they had was the Mosquito. So Hawker was kind of pushed aside, told hey, stick to these production aircraft or things they're going to be able to get in right away. So they kind of came to the jet aircraft a little bit later than the others. So when it got towards the end of the war and it looked like the war was going to be about over, they were allowed to start kind of moving a little bit of their design team towards jet aircraft. So the origins of the Seahawk and the Hawk was from the Fury. So the original conception was that they were going to make a jet version of the Fury. And there was a couple of different versions of the Fury. There's a Griffin one, and there was a Bristol Centaurus version of the Fury, and so they chose the Griffin one to start with. So the first designs basically just replaced the engine with a jet engine. In this case, they were looking at the Rolls-Royce Nene turbojet as the engine to use. So they dropped the Griffin engine off the nose, moved the pilot's cockpit forward. They placed the engine in the middle, and initially had the jet pipe going out the tail. So they were going to basically keep the same wings and essentially the same tail that was being used on the Fury. That didn't seem to get too much interest. They saw some problems with that. That was a design P1035 that was submitted to the Air Ministry in November of '44. That was rejected from the outset, so it didn't get past the basic drawings. So they went back to the drawing board and revised it. That became P1040. They went to a bifurcated exhaust, which you kind of see here, where you got a single engine here in the middle of the fuselage, and then the exhaust comes out the sides instead of going out the tail. So that had a couple of advantages. One, you had less pressure loss going all the way down a tube going out the tail. And that also freed up the rear of the fuselage for fuel tanks, because one of the things that these early jets was very, very fuel heavy consumptions. So having the ability to add more fuel in there was definitely a benefit for them. So they felt confident. Sidney Cam, who was the lead designer for Hawker, felt confident enough in this aircraft that he issued a production order. So they, on their own money, started working on making an actual prototype, even though there wasn't any direct backing from the Air Ministry. So at the time, then they also started making some other changes. They changed the wings. Instead of the semi-elliptical wings that were on the Fury, they went to a straight taper wing to make it simpler to produce. They raised the tailplane up. Then once the prototype first flew, was it September 2nd of 47? There was a number of handling problems and stuff, so they ended up putting this little acorn in front there to help with the airflow over the tail. They also, when they created this one, they went to a nose wheel. Prior to that, since it was just using the Fury's wing directly, it was a tail dragger. So they switched it to being a nose wheel. And they also were talking to the Fleet Air Arm about making a version of it for them as well. So the FAA version was the P1046, and the RAF didn't really have much interest in it because it was only really able to go about 600 miles an hour. There was other aircraft that were coming online that we're going to provide superior performance to it. This really wasn't that much of a big jump from the then current Meteors and Vampires. So the RAF lost interest, but the Fleet Air Arm still had some interest in it because of the fact that it had much better range than pretty much any other jet at the time. So they kind of stuck around with it, and the Hawker ended up building a full naval prototype in 1948, end of August in 1948, and that was coded VP 413. And then after quite a few modifications to it, they were gearing up for full production. And that was the initial order was in November of 1949, and then shortly after that, the Korean War broke out, and Winston Churchill put a super priority order on this because of the MiGs that showed up in Korea, and the RAF, or the Fleet Air Arm, was basically still using prop planes for fighters. So they did a super priority on this. Hawker was gearing up to producing it themselves, but they had a lot of other stuff they were working on, so they ended up farming out the main part of the production to Armstrong Whitworth. So only the first 30, I think it was, of the production, that initial production run, was actually made by Hawker. The rest of them were with their sister company of Armstrong Whitworth, all part of the Hawker Siddeley group. And so the first one was the F1, which is what this kit is representative of, as an F1 fighter. They made a total of 60 F1s, and they were mainly just used for service trials, and they quickly were replaced by up-engined, a few other modifications by the F3. Then they made fighter-bomber versions of it, and those took over the production. That was actually the main production run, was the later fighter-bomber versions. So the first squadron to receive it was 806 Squadron. They ended up on the HMS Eagle, but by then, even though they got the super priority, it was late in getting really up to speed and fully operational. It wasn't until 1954 when that occurred, which of course was too late for Korea. So they did not make it for that fight. But they did get involved in a few other fights. They were involved with the Suez Crisis. Later models of the Seahawk were part of the Fleet Air Arm Strike Force in the Suez Crisis. The Dutch became interested in it. The Royal Netherlands Naval Air Force acquired a number of these, and they were used in some of the challenges that they had with what was it called, some of the colonial uprisings that they were managing at the time. West Germany got some as well too. They ordered 68. Australia tested a couple on their carrier, but opted not to put it into service. The Netherlands, Dutch, ended up with 30 of them. They used them from 1957 to 1964. They were flown off of a aircraft carrier, and then the Indian Air Force ordered some. They got 21 new ones and 12 refurbished ones, and then they added an additional 30 of the ex-German aircraft. And they were around for a while. Last were retired in 1983. And so they were also involved in some fighting when the Indo-Pakistani wars. The one in 65 and 71. Hawks were involved in those, and in fact, in the 71 one, they sunk a few Pakistani patrol boats. So they got into a bit of action there. So let's take a look at the kit and see what we got going here. So this is pretty similar to one of the other kits that we've seen from Hawk. Earlier we had a Hawker Hunter, which, interesting, this aircraft actually was further developed. The RAF wanted a swept-wing fighter, so the later developments for the RAF of this Hawk actually then ended up becoming the Hunter. And so we've got some pretty neat artwork on the cover here, modeled from official plans. Tell you about a stand you get, and really emphasizing, all the greatness of the plastic kit. That they're all interlocking, no sanding, no shaping. Special, you get glue with it, high impact polystyrene plastic. So in 55, plastic was still unusual, so they're really promoting that pretty heavily on here. So on this side, we've got showing some of the other kits available. We've got the Hunter that we saw. There's a Sabre. There's a Westland S55, which they eventually called the Whirlwind. And again, more stuff about it being a plastic kit. On this side here, same information here, talking about the stand a little more. It's transparent. You get a transfer to put on the stand, and then it's a 72nd scale kit. See the residue from the tape that was used to hold it closed. And what's kind of neat is there's a little cutout here, which making it easier to pull the lid off of the box. This end here, we've got information about the parent company and Frog. And so we got International Model Aircraft Limited, part of the Lyons Brothers group of companies. And on this end is the kit name, type of kit, and the catalog number, the 328P. Now, if you noticed, there are some staples on this. The very first issues of this, I believe, are the ones that had the lithograph that was wrapped around in a hard box. And this is printed directly onto the cardboard, and then the cardboard stapled closed instead of being glued closed. So I think this is the second type of box that they produced. It could be the other way around, but I believe it's this way. It went lithograph and then these staple boxes, and then they went to a newer glued box after that. So let's get inside here. And we've got our instructions. So printed on some pretty nice paper. And it has this little slick feel to it. And it's just one sheet, nothing on the back. And so we've got catalog number, name, all that stuff. More information about the stand again. Information about the little glue capsule. And then the instructions are in a full exploded view. Parts being called out by name or by number and by names as well. Showing you decal placement all here. And looks like pretty simple, one-piece wings, one-piece tails, molded in pilot, so not a lot to it. Then you've got your step-by-step instructions here on how to assemble. And when you get to the end, this completes the construction. Then you go on to your painting and finishing, talking about the different kinds of paints to use, how to paint it, how to do the stand again. Mention of some additional kits from the line, all these being 72nd scale. And then they do have some larger kits that were in 196, the Britannia, the DCA7, and Viscount. These are some really spectacular kits. I've seen the DC7 in an unboxing on Mike Machot's channel. I've seen the Britannia in person. These are some really nice kits, and I hope to add those to the collection at some point. Then you've got some profiles here showing you some more decal placement and painting, more information about Lyons Brothers and Model Aircraft Limited. So I'll set those aside, and we'll take a look at the decals. The decals are not too bad of shape. And you get all your roundels, you get the squadron marking. Here's the label for the stand, serial numbers, and this is an actual aircraft. This is part of that first group of Mark 1s that were produced, WF-163, and that they were with 806 Squadron, this is the squadron logo of the Ace of Diamonds. And they were on the HMS Eagle in 1954. So this particular aircraft was built by Armstrong Whitworth and first flew January 28th of 53. It was delivered to the Fleet Air Arm on March 3rd of 1953, and then was assigned to 806 Squadron. It was withdrawn from service a short time after that, in June 23rd of 1964. Went to short-term storage, then was pulled out, assigned to 736 Squadron until January 17th of 55, and then it went to 764 Squadron March 13th of 56, and it crashed while it was with 764 Squadron on October 22nd of 1956. The report shows that it swung off the runway on landing. The right undercarriage collapsed, and the pilot was a Sub-Lieutenant J.S. Hopkins. He was uninjured, but there was enough damage to the aircraft, and also this being the older model that really wasn't being used anymore, it ended up being written off. Then ultimately it got moved to Royal Naval Air Station Culdrose in Cornwall in December of 59 for crash and fire rescue training, and was ultimately completely scrapped by mid-1960. So I did some pretty deep dive in trying to find a photograph of this particular airplane, and I was not. But I was able to find quite a number of pictures of the other aircraft from this first batch that went to 806 Squadron. So they're all marked identically to this one. So it'll give you kind of a feel for how accurate these decals are and the representation that they're making with it. So show you those here. All right, now let's get into the plastic. So first off, I think it stands out to me is this really unique color for a kit. It's kind of like a duck egg blue that the kit was molded in. Plastic's a little dirty though, but that's a really unique color for a model kit. Really, really pleasant. I think that would allow you to just paint the top, and I think this color is what the bottom color was on these early Fleet Air Arm jets. So you can see it's got a lot of raised panel lines. You got some rivet detail, You do have some recessed stuff for the tail markings. You do have some recessed for the cannon ports. They're just little divots. The landing gear is outlined, so there's no open bay for it. There is a hole here for the intake that is backed by something, so it's not just gaping through. The jet exhaust appears to be just a flat plate there, unless there's a separate piece for it. I don't recall seeing on there. No. So that's it for your exhaust. That's pretty limited. But not really a whole lot of flash on it. A good number of locator pins. So it should go together pretty straight. So the other half has got the tail hook molded on. So it's a pretty tight fit. There you get your pilot. Just a head and headrest. There's your fuselage. And here we've got a tree, which includes a wheel. Looks like little stubs here to go on, hold the wheels on. Looks like your nose gear, your main gear, drop tanks, a little bit of flash on one of the drop tanks. And we've got our wings. And while the markings are not molded on like you see on some other kits, there is a spot for the marking that is kind of outlined very subtly on this wing. On the top of it is very, very subtle. The bottom, it's got a little bit more raised part to it. So those are your wings. And it looks like there's a little slot there for where the landing gear goes. See how the wing joint is. How tight that fit is. Not too bad. Wouldn't need too much fill or sanding on that. And see what the tail looks like too. And a little bit more of a gap on the tail. That certainly gets the look. It's a real tight fit. And let's see, for loose parts, there's another gear, another wheel, those are the main wheels, another tail plane. That one does have a little bit of flash on it. Here's the clear piece, and looks like it's gotten scratched up a little bit, but it does have some framing. Fairly thick, like most of these early Frog kits, the clear plastic parts are not the highlight of them. Plastic's a little cloudy always, and it's pretty thick, but gets the shape, and you do have some pretty good framing to be able to paint if you want to. And here's the stand. Huge stand for this size of kit. It takes up a big chunk of the box, but pretty nice stand. The markings on it, and then here's where you put that one decal and set that on there. So good size stand for it. Here's something that also is pretty interesting. They give you a weight for the nose. I've seen this in a couple of other kits. So that fits in this little slot right there. That's kind of neat. A lot of wish more kits would have done that. I know some of the modern kits are starting to do this again, but this was something that kind of disappeared for quite a while. So that's kind of neat having that in there. Now, what is missing is the glue. I've noticed that in a couple of these other kits that I have from the same era, where it talks about glue on the packaging and in the instructions, but there's no glue in these kits. So I'm wondering if the glue was not included on kits that were sent to the United States. So I'm assuming that that's where this kit originally came from, as opposed to coming from England. So there you have it. So there were out of there was 550, I think, 551 Seahawks produced, and there's 36 of them still complete, surviving. One is flying still. The one that is with the Fleet Air Arm Museum in Yeovilton was flying for quite a number of years. It's actually marked up in this 806 Squadron markings. It wasn't flying for a few years, but I believe it has now been put back to becoming airworthy. So if anybody in the audience knows for sure, let us know in the comment if the Seahawk's back to flying again. So as with a lot of these Frog kits, it did get quite a few issues. So with Frog, we had this one in 55. There was a Triang issue. The Triang is the ones that were sold to France, because Frog's a little offensive to the French. And then there was boxing on that. Looks almost identical to this, except it just has Triang on it. Then in 64, there was a new issue of this tit with with new art. And then 68 was a Rovex issue, and then 78, along with all the other Frog kits that were not part of the Axis, the mold got sent to Novo, and they used that kit for, appears to be just one issue. Then it shows up again with a Soviet company called DFI, Donetsk Toys Factory, and then there was a second issue in 83 with a different color box, and then another one in 84. Shows up again with a company called DZI out of Ukraine in 1990. Then 2004, Eastern Express issued it again. Eastern Express, I believe, is a Russian company. And then the molds end up in Poland for a 2008 issue from Chromatic and a 2017 issue from Mr. Craft. And I can't imagine that there's no indication, as far as I can see, on these late 2000s boxings saying that, hey, this is a 70-year-old kit at this time. So hopefully, before someone buys one of those, they do a little bit of research and figure out that, hey, this is a very, very old kit and very, very simple. And so if you're into this kind of stuff, then it's great. It's a great way of getting one that you can build and not worry about ruining an old 55 kit. But if you're buying that thinking you're getting a new kit, you're going to be surprised finding this thing in there. So that's about it for today. If you've built one of these, as always, tell us about it in the comments section. If you've got one of these sitting on your shelves that's built up, take some pictures of it, send it in, for next viewer build video. We're putting that one together now. It should be out in the next couple of days. Or if you build any of these early Frog kits, let us know about it. So thanks for watching, and have yourself a great rest of your day.